Okay.
All right.
Yeah. You'll have to be patient with
No,
me.
that's fine. All right, this is an interview at the Division of Military Naval Affairs at Latham, New York. It is the 3rd of October, 2003, approximately 12:45 p.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. What is your full name, date of birth, and place of birth?
Oh, I was born in my name at that time. I was born in Youngstown, Ohio, in 1916, and my name right now is Katherine Denegar.
Okay. What was your education prior to entering the military service?
I had a I was a registered nurse, and I also had a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Okay. Do you remember where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I was. I was working nights, and I just couldn't believe it. Yes, it's like yesterday. You don't forget these things. Yeah. We were all, of course, terribly excited when we got into the war and realized the damage that was done to our Navy. And yes, I do remember it very well.
Okay. Why did you enlist in the Army Nurse Corps?
Oh, well, frankly, all I thought of was I knew that the Army nurses went overseas. And at that time, I don't think the Navy did. And I just liked the Army.
Okay. Where did you enlist?
In Youngstown, Ohio.
And where did they send you anywhere for training, although you already had your degree?
I had further training when we went to Fort Knox, Kentucky. And then, of course, I had the usual training that they give you. In other words, you know, crawling on the ground with the whole thing, and even marching. And I did a terrible job because I'm left-handed and left-footed and everything else. But the second lieutenant passed me. I guess they were desperate.
Did you receive any additional nurse training or?
We had basic training at the hospital, you know, telling us that you know how you do your work, but you do it the Army way. And we understood it, you know, from that. Yeah.
Now, you were made a second lieutenant?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Where were you stationed?
Well, the first thing after I left Fort Knox, Kentucky, I went to the Newton D. Baker Hospital in Maryland. And that is, I think it's mostly psychiatry. And unfortunately, the major there wanted to keep me as a psychiatric nurse, and I had never had psychiatry. And she said, well, you have a bachelor's in psychology, you could do quite well. But I was put in the most mentally disturbed ward, which was quite an unhappy situation. I mean, you realize what war is like when you see these men coming back like that.
Okay, so these were all men that...
they were all men,
the problems were caused by the war itself.
As a result of the European theater, mostly, yeah.
Why did you find that so disturbing?
Pardon?
Why was it so disturbing to you?
Disturbing me?
Yeah, why did it disturb you so much?
I didn't, frankly, I had never had psychiatry. All I had is the study of the different diseases in psychiatry. And to go into this most mentally disturbed ward where they, I remember feeding a young Italian man, and very strong looking, and he said, you're pretty, but if I could get you, I would kill you. I mean, we had that sort of problem. And we had these catatonic patients that would stand for hours at a time and then rush and try to destroy their beds and that sort of thing. But I read a lot of the histories, which I found very interesting, and this one particular man that was catatonic had been made to bury the dead in Europe, and he just couldn't handle it. I also realized by reading all their histories that some of them should never have been in the Army, but with the excitement of World War II, if you could walk in, you were taken.
How long were you there?
I must have been, I complained. Most of my friends had gone already overseas, and I just didn't want to stay there. And she said, well, we're going to give you a first lieutenancy, and you can help us. And I said, I'm really not comfortable with this thing. I think I must have been about 4 months, 3 months. And I finally got headed for overseas.
Okay, where did you go overseas?
Well, of course, we never knew where we were going, but we ended up in Manila. And the sad thing about that, there was about 375 of us, and we weren't welcomed. The major, who was a female, came out and said that on the way over that there had been nurses that had been stealing the narcotics, and there was venereal disease, and certainly conduct unbecoming an officer. So that was our beginning in Manila.
How long were you in the Philippines?
I was in Manila just overnight.
Oh, okay.
Then we were sent to Mindoro. And I understand the man coming from Lingayen Gulf and had captured that had to have someplace before they got to Manila, and they set up in Mindoro. And it was a jungle, really. I never saw anything that looked like just the jungle and the monkeys. But they did set up an airfield, and they did that by taking tracks, metal tracks, and they were able to fly the planes in. Of course, then they had attacked the Japanese in Manila. But that was before I got there.
Now, what kind of hospital was this?
It was called a station hospital, but it was really kind of a laugh. All it was like a board that you could walk on, and we had the beds. We had mosquito netting, though, and just a canvas overhead, and that was the type of thing we had.
So it had open sides?
Everything was open, yeah. Now, we did not have anyone coming in from the war. We had dengue fever, we had jungle rot, we had venereal diseases, and we had everything of that, and malaria, and dysentery.
Okay. Was that your assignment while you were there for the whole time, or did you go somewhere else?
Yes. Later, much later, we were sent to, I was sent on to Batangas, and right then they were beginning to get ready for the invasion of Japan, and we were going to be the first ones going. But fortunately, there was the atomic bombs, the 2 atomic bombs, and then because you probably have heard so many times the criticism of the atomic bomb, the Japanese would have fought to the death. And there would have been hundreds and hundreds of Americans killed, and we knew that.
So what was the reaction in your group when you heard about the atomic bombs?
Delighted, delighted. Not only that, so many of the men had been there for about 3 years, and the fact that they weren't going to encounter, I mean, there's a good chance they'd get back to the States. And no, I heard nothing but elation over it, and I felt the same way. But many times I've heard people criticize, but they were not in the war.
Do you remember where you were and what your memory was when you heard about the death of President Roosevelt?
When I heard about what?
The death of President Roosevelt.
Oh, yes, we were, I possibly could, no, where was I? I was near Washington at the time, and of course we felt terrible. That he couldn't, he went through most of this war, and then of course he couldn't make it. Yes, I do remember.
Do you recall your reaction or anyone's there about Douglas MacArthur, the thoughts about him?
Yes. I thought he was a tremendous general, particularly the way he acted in Tokyo. But I didn't like some of the things I had heard. There was an awful lot of criticism in Manila about him because he was an arrogant, egotistical type of man. And then, of course, when he came back, he returned. I understand that he waded through the water twice to make sure there was pictures. Yes, there was a lot of criticism on him. And I think Eisenhower had been with him for quite a long, and I don't think they got along that well.
No, okay. When did you return to the States?
Not too long after the war. We still had 50,000 Japanese up in Baguio under General Yamashita or Yamashita, whatever way you want to pronounce it. And he fought. I guess he thought that he was going to fight to the end. And the Japanese always did it that way anyhow. But they finally conquered him, and I can remember he was brought down to Manila. We were still around because we were told we could go down and visit if we wanted. I had no feeling about going down to see a man that I knew would be executed. Yeah, even though the Japanese, we certainly had a very poor opinion of them. We did have them not in the wards, but around the areas cleaning up and so on. They never looked at it. But we had the German prisoners. They were having a grand time. They were trying desperately to learn English. And we had them in the wards, and they were wonderful.
Now this was in the United States? Or
no, that's still in, that was from the time we got to Fort Knox, Kentucky, they were already there.
Oh.
There were a lot of prisoners there. Very few Japanese, but quite a lot of the Germans that had come from the European theater. Yeah.
So they were used in the wards to help?
They were used in the wards, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they were also used in the, I don't know whether making the food, but cleaning the areas, and of course it was immaculate. Yeah.
Now I noticed you said something about making a wedding dress from a parachute, being a memory.
There was something about the war. You didn't have to be beautiful. All you had to do is be a woman and be there. And there were some romances. I myself didn't approve of them because I was afraid that in the excitement of the war, they weren't going to last. But I always did a lot of sewing and crafts and what have you. So making use of the old, what are they? Parachutes. I rigged up a couple of good outfits.
Okay, do you have any other memories that you want to share?
Yes, there was one that I thought was quite funny. When we got to Tongass, I believe, yes, the big ships that the American Navy were in, and we occasionally got an invitation for dinner. Well, that was quite a chore because you got in a little boat, and then you had to get close to the big ship, and then you had to grab onto the ropes, and that is difficult because when you do, you go up against the ship and it's hard to move. Well, my friend was ahead of me, and she got part way, and she said, "I can't make it. I can't go any further." I said, "Don't fall on me. Keep on going." She got a little further, and she said, "I can't go. I wet my pants. I'm having a terrible time." I said, "I'll be right behind you." So when we got up there, we met the captain, and we're like Siamese twins because I never left her side. But it struck me funny.
Did you ever make use of a GI Bill at all?
Yes, I did. When I came back, like I say, I had my bachelor's, but I intended to work with a doctor and handle his clinic. He had a big clinic. And I did not know the medical technology part. He said, "Well, I'll teach you." And no, I prefer to learn. So I wanted to come as close to New York as I could get, and I ended up in Albany at the Bender Laboratory. And I graduated with also a degree in medical technology, which I got through. It was a year. It took me a year because I had the rest of it already. But I got that through the Army. I was very pleased.
Now, were you ever offered the 5220 Club?
No.
Okay. How do you think, did you ever join veterans groups?
Oh, don't start me. When I came here, I was married to a veteran who long since died in 1973. And he had been a captain, and he was almost called back to the Korean War again. And of course, fortunately, he had high blood pressure and didn't get in. He'd had 5 years of it. And I said, "Well, I want to join." So I went over to the local one, And they said, you cannot join as a veteran. You've got to be a woman.
Auxiliary.
Yeah, well, forget it. I felt that I earned a place, but of course it's been changed since then. And that was the end of that.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that was with you in service?
For a while I did with one that I was in service. That was an unusual thing. I had met a very nice woman, a nurse, another nurse, not from Youngstown, but from Warren. And she never dated, but she had a date the night before she went. Well, she turned out to be pregnant. And the Army sent her back from the Philippines to the place, I think Jefferson in California or something. And they made arrangements that they would inform her people that she was there, but not because the reason. The Army did quite a bit of that type of thing. And I saw her later, but really, I guess I never went back to Ohio, only on visits, and I found New York my home. Yeah.
How do you think your time in the service affected your life?
Pardon?
How did it change your life or affect your life?
I think when I came back, I can remember being on that ship. I felt we had so much over here, and so much poverty everywhere else. Of course, I had never been overseas before, and I think I was more compassionate, I believe. And being a nurse, you got a lot of that. So I think it did change my life, and it also made me change in my thinking on war. One soldier dead is one too many.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Okay.